I would now like to turn today's call over to Ms. Kendra Coe, Director of the Grand Rapids U.S. Commercial Service Office. Thank you. You may begin.
Welcome to today's presentation of HELP International Staffing Considerations. The conference is brought to you by the U.S. Commercial Service in conjunction with the West Michigan District Export Council. I'd first like to thank our sponsors for helping us support this webinar series. Just a couple of bits of information about the Commercial Service and the West Michigan District Export Council before I turn it over to today's speakers. The U.S. Commercial Service is part of the federal government. We have offices in over 100 offices in the U.S., including 3 offices here in Michigan. Our goal is to try to help companies to export their products and services worldwide, and we do that by giving them matchmaking services, providing them with independent market research, and also trade counseling. One of our great partners is the Michigan District Export Council, and they are a group of individuals who are appointed by the Secretary of Commerce to serve for 3 to 4 year terms. And what they do is they help the U.S. Commercial Service meet with companies for one-on-one counseling. Our first speaker will be Dr. Beth Page. She's a leadership development and executive coaching practice lead for the Great Lakes region of Right Management. Prior to joining Right Management, she was a VP of HR in charge of global diversity and staffing for Monsanto. And her previous clients include global organizations such as MasterCard and the U.S. Air Force. Following Beth's presentation, we'll have Dr. Satish Deshpande. He is the Associate Dean of Hayworth College of Business at Western Michigan University. And again, he has a wealth of information with over 25 years experience teaching human resource management and over 80 articles referred to and published in various management journals. He's a true leader of the university and business communities which he serves. Thank you very much for both of you joining us today.
Thank you, Kendra. It's a pleasure to be here. So today I'm going to begin by talking about a study that Manpower conducted earlier this year of 40,000 of the employers that Manpower works with, and Right Management is a part of the Manpower group. This study was really to explore the talent shortage, and I'm beginning with this because it has huge implications for global staffing. This will become the foundation for what I'm going to speak to today. In this study, we were exploring the extent of talent shortages within the global labor market, the types of jobs that are hardest to fill across the globe, impact of talent shortage on the business, and then what I'm thinking for most employers will be most important is what are some of the strategies that people are actually doing that are working to manage the current talent shortage. So the overview of the results. So 1 in 3 employers globally report difficulty filling jobs. And this has not really changed much since last year. So 50% are reporting the same kind of level of difficulty that they had this year as they did last year. 48% are saying that it's impacting their ability to really meet business needs. And I will say we work with quite a few global clients here in West Michigan, and we are hearing that loud and clear in our practice, our consulting practice. And more than 1 in 5 global employers are still not pursuing strategies to tackle talent shortages. For the bottom line is that they're saying it's really impacting business, and what Manpower would conclude is that this means that really there needs to be more proactive approaches taken to manage the talent shortage. You can see on the right-hand side of this slide the countries that are having the most difficulty filling jobs, Japan, Peru, Hong Kong, Brazil, and Romania. And in just a moment, I'm going to show you a slide that will share kind of the data related to this for across the globe in terms of the companies that and the countries where Manpower does business. So you'll notice on this slide in the middle, the multicolored kind of rainbow color, if you will, shows the global average in terms of countries reporting that they're having difficulty filling jobs. The U.S. is just to the right of that. And if you think of some of the bigger countries that we often associate with commerce, you'll notice Brazil is 4th from the highest. India is just a couple down from there. So overall, the low end is some of the countries in the UK, but if you see the vast majority really across the globe are saying that it's difficult, they're having difficulty filling jobs right now. Some of the jobs that are hardest to fill, and this is from this year. So skilled trades are the hardest to fill in the U.S. And also the hardest to fill right now globally. And again, this very much mirrors what we hear day to day from our clients. And then you can kind of work on down. One of the things that's interesting to me is last year when the survey was taken, engineers were much further up the list. I believe they were in the 4th place in terms of difficulty to fill. They're now in the 10th place for the U.S., although they're still 3rd hardest to fill across the U.S. One of the comments that I will make about all of these findings, and Satish is going to dive into this in more detail, which I'm excited to hear personally, is the point that we were talking for a long time about the global talent shortage, and then the Great Recession hit, and it really made us kind of get a little blurry in terms of, well, really, where is the talent shortage, and how difficult is this? And now that the economy is picking up, for the most part, certainly in the U.S. and for the most part across the globe, we're now feeling its impact again. I was recently in a seminar and somebody said, well, you know, we always say things are going to be bad, and then they're never as bad as they think that, you know, we think they're going to be, and this is probably going to be true for the talent shortage. And I will just say that thinking about the talent shortage is different than thinking about economics and economic recovery. Talent is based on purely on demographics. You know, where are the people in the world? How many people in the world are there? And where are those people? And do they have the right education that we need? And when we look at this across the globe, both in terms of aging populations, in terms of countries that have very young populations, if we look at where the business is growing, this is different than economic recovery. This is something that's very real, that we have a much more clarity in terms of the reality of it than we do. You know, economies can switch on a dime, sometimes for reasons we can understand, sometimes for reasons we can't, but this is different. So, and I think now that the economy is recovering, we're seeing the impact much more differently. This next slide will just show you, if we break down the U.S., the world and around global regions, what are some of the impacts we're seeing in terms of most difficult jobs to fill. Globally, Americas and EMEA, it's the skilled trades. Asia Pacific, we see sales representatives. And what's interesting to me is the sales representatives are on all of these lists. So this is another area that we're really feeling the impact of. It's a newer emerging area across the globe. So we talk overall around the global talent shortage, but the leadership talent shortage is even worse. And again, we're hearing this from our clients. We've been hearing this for a while, so for me it's interesting to see these numbers. So 87% of organizations don't believe that they have future leaders identified to fill critical roles. 46% of organizations identify the lack of future leaders as a top concern, and only 13% believe that their organizations have ample leadership pipelines. So this is really becoming more of a challenge, and again, this is across the globe. We hear this in right management in our practice as well as Manpower. So impact on the organization. 43% of organizations in this survey said that the talent shortage is currently reducing their ability to serve clients. And then that, right underneath that, 41% are saying that this is having a direct effect on their ability to be competitive and to be productive. And again, we're hearing this from our clients. We've heard from some of our manufacturing clients. Ability to get skilled trades has hurt their production numbers and their ability to deliver to customers. From a leadership point of view, we are at a really professional level point of view. We're hearing many organizations that are now growing, which is exciting, especially for those of us in Michigan, who are saying we can't find people with the right professional background or years of experience to fill roles, and it's hurting us. We are at capacity, and when we project our growth in the next year, 2 years, we start to get scared because we see we're not going to have enough professionals and people to lead those professionals to do the job. So this data for us comes alive every day. What's causing the talent shortage? The 5 key reasons that people report, 35% are saying just lack of available applicants, no applicants, or lack of those people that have the right technical competencies. Lack of experience is another reason, 22%. Lack of workplace competencies, soft skills, 17%. And I always, for employers in particular, I like to point out this last number. only 13% say that pay is an issue. So often, and we hear that in our clients, well, we just need to pay people more, and then we would attract the right talent. That is, it's more that they're just not there, or they don't have the right skills or right preparation. It's not so much that you're not paying enough. So what to do? When we polled employers and said, what are you doing that seems to be working? One is a change in people practices, looking for new talent sources, looking at new work models, and then 20% said, well, we're not trying to do anything different right now. We're kind of scratching our heads. So what I'd like to do for the rest of this presentation is share with you some of the details around what are some of those things that employers are doing that are working, that are helping them overcome the current talent shortage. This falls into 5 buckets. I'll go around these buckets, and then in a moment I'll share some more details. So designing new people practices, in particular looking at new recruitment strategies, is one of the things people are doing that's working. Fostering a learning culture that encourages employees to own their own careers and encourage them to develop themselves so they'll be ready for roles now and in the future. Promoting a unique employee value proposition is something that employers are doing to attract more people to their company. Adopting an agile mindset, looking at untapped pools to source new talent, is something that a lot of companies are doing with great success. And then lastly, once you have recruited them and hired them, making sure that you mitigate the demand for new talent by keeping people engaged and retained. So new people practices. Some of the things we heard that people are doing, and this is both in the Manpower survey as well as honestly what we're hearing from our clients here in West Michigan that's really helping, is first of all really approaching talent management like you would business. And so if you think about operating a business, you have a strategic plan for your business. And more companies are creating strategic plans for their people needs and finding great success with that, really planning today for the kinds of talent needs that they'll have for now as well as in the future. Another people practice that works well is hiring them for potential, recognizing that we can't always find the perfect person, so we're going to think about what's their potential, knowing that we're going to support their growth and development. A very similar idea to this is the idea of teachable fit. So a lot of companies are saying, let's think about what are those non-negotiable skills that we just need people to walk in the door with, and then what are those things that we can teach them? I've recently heard some IT people talk about that. There's certain basics that we need people to know, but there's certain things that are unique to our system that maybe people have had experience with, maybe they haven't. We're not going to worry about that anymore. We're just going to teach them those things once they walk in the door as a way to get the perfect employee. Another thing is hiring today for the skills you need for tomorrow. So recognizing that if there's a particular type of engineering skill, for example, that you know is very unusual to find in Michigan or in the Midwest, if you find one of those people, even if you don't have a job for them today, many companies will hire them today. Put them into an onboarding program, an orientation program, a rotational program, give them a similar job as a way to make sure that when that need arises in a year or two, they have that individual within their organization and ready to go. And then the last thing is many companies are saying, we are just going to grow our own. That we're going to stop searching and searching and searching. We're going to grow our own. We recently had a group of HR leaders here at Right Management, and many of them said, it took us 9 months to fill a position. We could have taken someone who was really high potential, and in 9 months, we could have trained them to do what we were spent 9 months spending money on, looking for the perfect person to do. So growing your own is becoming more and more of a popular strategy. In terms of looking at untapped talent pools, many people are looking at talent pools that have transferable skills and hiring them in. A great example of this is many companies will focus on veterans. And what they'll say is, we like to hire veterans because they have a approach to work or a disciplined process orientation or a fundamental technical background that we really like. And we're not going to worry so much if they know our business or even if they know particularly. I know a company that hires veterans all the time into their HR function, and maybe the closest thing they ever did to HR before this was training in artillery or weapons or something like that, but they will hire them in and they say, we can teach them HR. What we can't teach them is a work ethic. What we can't teach them is a process orientation, and we that's worth it for us. Another strategy companies will use in terms of looking at untapped talent pools is connecting with underrepresented populations. An example of this might be is forging a strong relationship with an organization such as Society for Women Engineers, and then staying connected to them over time is a way to recruit interns, to identify top talent, and then once they graduate, bring them into their organization. Another strategy is looking at reciprocal relationships with universities, saying, we know you want to place interns with us. In exchange, we want to influence what you're teaching people so that we're more confident that we have students available who graduate that can meet our needs as an organization. Another strategy that many employers are kind of honing in on more is this idea of becoming an employment destination. Employers are really focusing on their brand, on their unique value proposition, and then marketing the heck out of it. I recently was talking to someone in a staffing organization, and they said their current strategy is they run their staffing organization just like they're a sales organization. They see prospective as employees in the same way they would view a customer. What are they going to do to sell that person on their organization, to see the value proposition within their organization and get them to sign the dotted line and come and become an employee. Another overall strategy employers are really focusing on right now is this idea of really fostering a learning culture that encourages employees to own their own career. Really underneath all that is a motivation to grow their own talent. There's a couple things that support the wisdom of this. One is this idea that the employee-employer social contract is changing. Career development, not a job for life, is now key to the value proposition that employees most want from their employers. And then it's often really the best way to get the employee that you really want is to teach them the things that you want them to know so that they can do a good job for you. There's a couple things that support this. As you all of us have readily seen, this idea of a job for life, being able to kind of be in one place for a long time and move from kind of a novice to a master who then goes back and brings other people up within the same company, that rarely exists anymore. And if we even look at the expectations of people that are in really the millennials and Gen Y folks, they are job hopping all the time, and they're thinking about this not as so much what's an organization going to do for me long term in terms of benefits and wage growth, promotion, but what's an organization going to do for me in terms of what can I learn? How can I develop myself? How can I add value to that organization? How can I add value to my career? And then how does that position me well for career growth in the future? And it may be with that employer, but very likely it may not be with that employer because they've all seen their parents or their friends' parents laid off and long-term careers derailed. What other evidence do we have of kind of the shift that, career development is important? The study that came from the Economist Intelligence Unit saw that one of the number one benefits that a firm currently uses to attract and retain specialized workers or leaders is this idea of training and development, that it's very important to people. And for most people, if I ask this question, think about for you what's important, this is typically pretty high on the list. The other kind of driver, if you will, in terms of growing your own is from a leadership perspective, you may have no other choice. So the International Monetary Fund and other groups are currently predicting that 70% of the world's growth between now and 2016 will come from emerging markets. So this means emerging economies, so countries and economies that were not competing with us for talent even in the last 5 years, are now going to be competing with us for talent, in particular technology talent, sales talent, engineering talent. So the competition for talent is much more global now. From a demographic point of view, the sweet spot for rising senior execs is 35 to 45-year-old age bracket, and the percentage of people in that age range is shrinking globally. So when you put those two things together, it's really hard, and again, we hear this from our clients. Going out and hiring the perfect leader is very, very difficult. It's often much more effective to grow your own, and then the research will show that they're often much more successful. The failure rate of hiring external senior leaders is very high, often 50%. So growing your own can make a lot of sense that way too. The final business case for developing your own leaders is that companies that did not abandon their leadership development efforts during the Great Recession fared better. And this study comes out of Europe. So these companies not only survived, but they actually grew during the economic downturn. And what made the difference was their long-term commitment to building leaders, developing people, seeing themselves as kind of being essentially that one of their core businesses was leadership development. And people are more engaged when you develop them. They are not only more engaged, but they typically tend to be 50% more productive. And if we look at the drivers of engagement based on engagement survey data, 2/3 of those drivers are often tied to career development. And again, we see this. We've done a number of engagement studies earlier this year in West Michigan, and this is something that we've seen in our clients. Is this idea of career development being very important to engagement. What is it you want to do to grow your own? Hands-on training, job rotation, skills training, career interest, occupational fit coaching, team training, mentoring, cross-functional skill and knowledge transfer, and also providing career paths for people. For leaders, what do they want? They want experiences that really deepen their understanding of the business, deepen their connection with peers, and give them a chance to try and innovate and do a little risk-taking as a way to grow and make a difference and add value to their own company, as well as traditional coaching and mentoring. Mitigating the demand for new talent. This is my final slide, this idea of what else can we do once you've got them, what do you do to keep them in the door and make sure that they don't leave, because as we know, many people job hop much more frequently, especially as the economy is improving. Doing a great job of onboarding helps them be successful and also commit to you in a different way. Succession management, planning for succession, and telling people how you see their future in the company can keep them engaged and retained. Looking at flexible work models, recognizing that people's lives change and their needs change over time, and that you can often get amazing talent that's very dedicated if you give them a flexible work model. Focusing on intrinsic motivators, need for competence, being connected or related, especially to their leaders, as well as giving them autonomy and allowing them to make an impact on the business. And of course, development is really important for engagement. And the last slide here I'm going to share with you is this idea about why is onboarding support important. I had mentioned that the statistics are pretty staggering, that people who go through a structured onboarding program are 58% more likely to stay with an organization after 3 years because they've been well integrated and well trained to be successful. And for leaders, this is especially important. Without successful onboarding, 40 to 50% of senior outside hires fail to achieve desired results, often because the cultural integration and the savvy that they need to culturally integrate has not been supported or developed very well. And of course, it's very costly when you do leave. So this is the end of my presentation. We are going to take questions at the very end, but at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Satish. He's going to talk to you much more about the global staffing considerations. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Page. My name is Satish Deshpande, and I'm from the Hayward College of Business at Western Michigan University. And what I wanted to do is start off by reinforcing a point that Dr. Page made when she talked about the Aon Hewitt study, which is having a leadership team or a management team that is fluent in the ways of the world is no longer a luxury. It is a competitive necessity. And if you see out there, over 80% of mid-sized and large companies send professionals abroad. And what we also find is the number of people on foreign assignments and the frequency of their travel abroad keeps going up. So we see a lot of that happening. While many companies do send people abroad to fill a business need, like go out and help to get market share in India or build a factory in China, we also see a number of employers sending people abroad for the wrong reasons. So you could be sending a favorite employee to a glamorous location like London or Paris as a reward, or you could be sending someone to Mongolia because that person is mediocre. So that's something we are seeing too happening, that folks are sending people abroad for the wrong reason. The other thing that we find in global business, which a global competent workforce needs to know, is that the rules of business vary across countries. Negotiation tactics vary, market strategy varies. And also, international assignments do not come cheap. On an average, a fully loaded expatriate package can cost 2 to 3 times the domestic package. In fact, we have a number of training programs for HR folks on international compensation. How do you package these the compensation of folks who are doing assignments abroad? And that can be a real complex process given tax structures and laws and other things. One of the problems we find taking place is that there is a real anemic return on expatriate investment. About 10 to 20% of expatriates return early. And one of the biggest reasons why expatriates return early is that their spouse and family were not able to adjust in the foreign country. So that's a big reason. The other problem is 30% of expatriates do not perform to expectations, and that's simply because they don't have the skills needed or the background in culture and other issues, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes, to be successful in that country. And the third problem we find is that when people come back, the turnover rate among folks coming back home after an international assignment is about double the rate of domestic turnover. One of the biggest problems I think that we have is most of the HR folks haven't really worked abroad, so they don't understand unique issues and global assignments and folks coming back. There are certain companies that do this real well, and one of the things that works well is if you as an organization can figure out what the new assignment of a returning expatriate is going to be about 3 to 6 months after 3 to 6 months before they return home. For example, give an example, what Monsanto does is they basically have the employee returning back, HR, and a line manager with international experience. These three work together to identify what would be the best job for this returning expatriate. And that seems to have a positive impact on folks not leaving the organization once they come back. So what are some of the things that we need to keep in mind when we send people abroad? Of course, technical skills or technical competence is often the main reason why people are sent abroad. Unfortunately, managers often send people who lack the ability to adjust to local customs, local business practices, and perspectives. So that's what we call culturally illiterate people. So sending folks purely based on technical skills creates a major issue, a major adjustment problems. So you want to make sure, of course, they're technically competent. You also want to know, you also want to make sure that these folks have a good understanding of the various systems within the company, how things work in headquarters, who are the key people, who are the power centers. So, that's really helpful to you when you're all by yourself in a distant country. The other thing you want to make sure is that these folks have broad-based sociability. So the last thing you want is to send someone abroad and all they do is stick with a small circle of expatriates. They don't build ties to locals, they don't build insights, or they don't adjust to their surroundings. So that's something else you need to keep in mind. The other thing is, are these folks flexible when it comes to different cultures? John Huntsman, who was the CEO of a chemical company in Utah and was the governor of Utah and a presidential candidate, I think, at one time, what he used to do is he would often take foreign trips with promising subordinates and would, kind of see what they would do once they were in a foreign country. Did they try out local food, or did they run to the nearest McDonald's or Pizza Hut? Did they just stay in their hotel, or did they go out and, look at the local sites? The other thing he would look at is when he had foreign visitors visiting him, how would his folks interact with them? Would they interact with them well, or would they just talk a few words with them and then go back and talk to the friends they knew? So cultural flexibility is something else you want to make sure these people have. And, the other thing you want to make sure is, they're cosmopolitan. Because people in foreign countries have norms, and we need to send folks who value those norms. We need to send folks who value and respect diverse viewpoints. One of the things that works well is if you hire students or if you have hired folks when they were in college, have done a study abroad for 6 to 8 months, actually lived in a foreign country, those folks tend to be pretty open to these issues. And the other thing you need to make sure is that these folks have a collaborative negotiation style. Of course, this style, being collaborative is very important in the U.S. But when it comes to negotiating abroad, this is extremely critical. Different cultures have different expectations and different styles, and folks need to know this when they go abroad. I'll give you an example from India. Indians tend to be very direct when they are confident that they are right. But when they want to avoid confrontation, they tend to be very ambiguous. So often in India, a yes may often mean a maybe, or we'll see what happens. So a lot of times you have to clarify, is this a real yes? And that's because a blunt no is considered to be rude and rarely heard. So often, if there's going to be a negative response, it's cushioned by offering of an alternative, or they stay silent, or they are non-committal. The other thing is, let's say you're negotiating in India. Indians often overlap each other while speaking, and lots of times the speed of the dialogue and the volume of their voice goes up. And in such situations, we tend to be polite, and we kind of don't say anything, and we wait for an invitation to speak. But the right thing to do is just jump in and talk over someone to make your point. So it's very important to know, what are some of the cultural issues in different countries. And of course, when it comes to sending folks abroad, one has to keep in mind the family situation. Is the spouse also working? How's that going to work? Kids in high school, all these kinds of things do have an impact in terms of someone being successful in a foreign assignment, and that's something you got to keep in mind when actually selecting someone to go abroad. So instead of sending someone for a long-term assignment, you could always, there are a number of alternative forms of international assignments, and what I thought I would do is just kind of briefly talk about some of the more widely used ones. So the first one I'm going to talk about is short-term assignments. So these are assignments typically less than a year. This is where the family stays back at home. It's like a temporary internal transfer. About half the companies in Europe and Asia do this. So, these are flexible assignments, not really expensive. You don't have to send the whole family, and that seems to work well. And then we have something called international business travelers. So when you hire someone, you're specifically telling them that international travel is an essential part of the work. So here there is no relocation of family, and typically these folks are going out for things like budget meetings, production scheduling, have a personal touch, keep in contact, make sure things are going okay. And then we have something called commuter assignments. These are very common in Europe. So basically you have a home base and you go to work on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. So that's typically, you find that in Europe because European countries are so close by. So you could be working for a German company and you may have a factory in Slovakia or someplace, and so you're just going there for 2 weeks and coming back. And finally, you have something called global virtual teams. So these are global teams, and work is coordinated by the internet or global communication technology. Folks do not travel between countries, but international assignments are managed from the home base. And this, of course, is great for routine work, routine tasks where face-to-face communications is not needed. You see a lot of that in IT companies or IT departments or even manufacturing. For example, a local manufacturing company here, folks work on a certain design during the day. End of the day, they send it to India. So when it's night here, it's day there. They work on it. End of the day, they send it back. And they kind of have telephone conversations somewhere at like 7 or 8 in the evening U.S. time, which is daytime in India. So you see some of that happening too, and can work very well when you're on routine stuff, when you're working on routine tasks. The other thing I wanted to really talk about is local universities can be a great source and a great help to you when it comes to international assignments or anything related to international. For example, the U.S. government allows students who are on an F1 visa, so these are international students who are coming in, studying here, doing an undergraduate degree or a graduate degree, to get an OPT. An OPT is it's an optional practical training. So typically you have, once you get done with your education or while you're doing your education, you as an international student are allowed to work for 12 months for a local company. Now, if you're in the STEM field, so if your field is in science, technology, engineering, or math, you could work up to 17 months. So the great thing here is you as an employer can go out and have these folks come and work for you, for a certain period of time. Universities also are a great source to hire international students. And just give an example, a local company just recently hired one of our Masters in Accounting students, and she was from China, so what they did was they kept her on OPT here. Once she graduated for 12 months, she learned the culture and the way things work in the head office, and then they sent her to their operations in China. So again, you could kind of use some of the rights you have when it comes to international students working in U.S. to leverage your local university to, identify talent that could work for you. Also, there are a lot of faculty members who are from other countries who teach at universities, so use them. They also are a great source. The alums that universities may have in other countries, again, are a great source. A lot of universities have study abroad programs, study abroad trips. So, for example, we at Western Michigan University have, study abroad programs. So these are study abroad trips for say about 2 weeks, 10 days, and so on. We have study abroad trips going to Bangalore in India, which is the Silicon Valley of India, trips going to Germany, Thailand, Chile, South Africa, Ghana. And this would be a great place, a great opportunity to join or send some of your folks as a part of a study abroad trip that local universities do. Local universities also do have a language and culture classes, so you could kind of make use of them. And also, a lot of the universities in the United States have collaboration with foreign universities and foreign companies, and that's something also you can leverage. And I want to talk about this in a few minutes as to how you could leverage this. The other resource you could use within local universities is there are about a dozen universities in the United States that have what we call a CYBER, a Center for Business Education and Research. And these CYBERs are funded by the federal government. And in the state of Michigan, Michigan State has a CYBER. And then there are a number of universities that have global business centers. So for example, we at the Hayward College of Business have a global business center. So again, these are resources for you to use. The Small Business Development Center that different universities have can also be useful. And one of the things that I'm going to talk about in a few minutes is something called the Michigan Corporate Relations Network. But just talking about the the Michigan, talking about the MBDC, one of the things that the MEDC, one of the things you also need to keep in mind is the MEDC also has various opportunities for companies to accompany them on trips to other countries. So for example, one of the things that the MEDC is doing is, I think around first week of October, they have set up something called the India Export Opportunity. So it's basically aimed at the automotive and manufacturing industries, and they're going to have an India-Michigan Global Business Summit in Mumbai on October 5th. So this is a great opportunity for, say, someone in the auto industry or manufacturing industry. If they want to set up something in India, just go out and look for a partner. No harm going on one of these trips and seeing what's out there. One of the unique things that recently happened in the state of Michigan is the creation of the Michigan Corporate Relations Network. So this was set up with the help of grants from the MEDC and the Michigan Strategic Fund Board. It's basically a statewide network of Michigan research universities. So it consists of the University of Michigan, Michigan State, Western Michigan, Wayne State, Michigan Tech, and Dearborn. And the objective of this network is to bridge businesses and university resources. And the idea is to allow businesses to leverage various resources that these research universities have and use this to help businesses grow. So this can be used for things like student recruiting, joint research products, faculty consulting, any of these things. This would be a great way for businesses to leverage and for businesses to use. And what I'm going to do is, this is going to be my final slide, is kind of put up a list of contact information. And the way it works is, say for example, and this is going to be a real crazy example, but you want to know how to open up a sheep factory in, say, Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia, and you have no idea what to do. So what you could do is you could call any of these 6 people. So for example, you could call Lisa Garcia at Western Michigan and call her up and say, hey, Lisa, I work for so-and-so company, and I want to open up a sheep factory in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia. Can you help me? So what Lisa would do is she would look within Western and see if there are any resources that could be of use to you. If not, she would contact her counterparts at the other 5 research universities and see if they have a resource. So what you do is, by just making a phone call to one of these 6 people, you can leverage and access all the research faculty and all the talent that exists within the 6 research universities. And, it could be anything. How do I hire folks for doing business in India? How do I set up, how do I find a biologist who works on this gene? We get all kind of interesting phone calls, and so if we don't have talent in-house, we pretty much can go and access talent that may exist at some of these other research universities. So that's basically the end of my talk here, and I guess we can open up for questions right now.
Jacob Clark, you may go ahead.
Hello, I have a question. I was just wondering if you would be able to give us some examples of cultural differences when you're going abroad to a country or even within one country itself.
Yep, yeah, sure. And for example, let me give you 2 examples. We just had visitors from a university in China, and so one of the things we had to do, make sure, is when we gave them gifts, we had to make sure that we didn't use blue, white, or black wrapping paper because, those colors are considered to be symbols of death in China. So, we kind of used, a pink and a yellow wrapping paper because it signifies happiness. And, things like when you give your when you give your visiting card, you give it with both hands. And the other thing is typically, in Western cultures, the seat of honor is, head of the table, while in China it is center of the table. So, you got to kind of keep those things in mind. About 2 years back, I was in Bangalore, India, talking to the National Institute of Personnel Management, which is their version of the Society for Human Resource Management. And, while I was doing this talk, I noticed that when I was making, I thought I was making some great points, but I was noticing that people were turning their heads from left to right. And then I kind of realized that in the south part of India, turning your head from left to right means yes, that they were agreeing with me. And while in the north part of India, turning your head, moving your head up and down means yes. And so, for example, if you're a Westerner out there and the folks are turning their head left to right, they might think that people are disagreeing with you when actually they are agreeing. So it kind of helps you to know some of these small things because, that can really create problems down the road.
Thank you so much to Dr. Page and Dr. Deshpande. I appreciate your time today. If you'd like to get further information on members from our district export councils, or if you'd like to connect with U.S. Commercial Service, please contact us at the following information. And this concludes our call.